So there has been a lot of conversation recently around the Nintendo Ambassador program, and this came about after Beatemups, or Wood from Beatemups, made a video specifically around how he was technically dropped, I guess, by Nintendo, but his story's a little different than what I've heard and somewhat experienced myself before. And I wanted to kind of go over it because I've had a lot of questions. I've even had emails about it, and I noticed a lot of people were talking about it in the chat on the last Spawncast, specifically about your opinion on it, and people were wondering if I was even still in the program because it seemed strange that they would essentially drop Wood, Beatemups. So what happened here was, as he describes, he received an email about how they wanted him to remove any reference as being a Nintendo brand ambassador from his signature on emails, any public profiles he has, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, anything, YouTube. And apparently they would still send him codes, which doesn't make a ton of sense because anytime they actually drop you from the Nintendo Ambassador program, because I've talked to several people who have been dropped over the past few years, it is a topic that comes up at times when you talk to people in person at conventions or other creators. They will bring up the Nintendo Ambassador program if you start getting into, okay, where are you getting reviewed codes from and all of this stuff, right? It comes up. So from what I've gathered, his situation is very unique because when they drop you, they just drop you. Like there are no more codes coming your way or nothing. So that's kind of one of the reasons when I heard this, I didn't think it had anything to do with his mod video. I have talked to people, several actually, who have been dropped for doing mods, like mod videos, whether they take like Mario or they'll take Star Fox, they'll take or Zelda, and they will kind of play around with the game, break it, and do all of this other stuff. They don't just tell you to disassociate with them publicly and they'll still send you codes. They just like cut you off. And it's my understanding that there was some change again in the program. And when I say again, it's because they have changed the program seemingly a bunch of times now. Wood did mention that Golan is the company that pretty much acts on Nintendo's behalf, from what I could tell, in the US. At least that's my experience. They act as like a PR agency to reach out to different influencers, and that is what we're called, or influencers at different corporations. They see value in people who have some sort of following on social media outlets, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, because they feel like if they can get you a code and have you play the game and talk about it, of course, maybe some of the viewers will get sold on the game from either seeing gameplay or hearing your opinion on it. It makes sense to them for a return on investment for giving you a game. And that's what it comes down to. They don't do this for fun, obviously. It's all business, right? That's the big thing here. Games are fun, but there is a massive amount of business that takes place behind it. And I don't think Wood is too far off on what he's saying, that he thinks you get to a certain point where it is risky to be associated with you publicly, at least. And what I think may have happened here, which I'll give my thoughts real quick on what I think happened, then I'll even go into some of my own stories and why I don't even ask about games anymore, by the way, from Nintendo and their brand ambassador and all of that. So what I think happened here is the change behind the scenes kind of has different tiers, sort of, or groups for the Nintendo Ambassador program at this time. And I think Wood has fallen kind of out of the public Nintendo Ambassador program, where they will have even full-on events where they bring people in to, of course, do fun photo ops and like I think there was like Luigi's Mansion one and stuff, and that's fun. I mean, that's a cool idea to do all of that. But as Wood himself said, he hasn't been invited to it. I've never been invited to one of those either, which is fine. I don't think I'd even have the time to go, to be honest. So at that point, I don't think it's necessary for them to see that as, oh, you're a brand ambassador, but we don't have you come out to any of these events, so we'll still send you the codes, but you're not really a public Nintendo brand ambassador, if that makes sense. I think they went through and they separated into groups based on really how much they would use you. Now, as for me, when Wood told me that he got this email, he was checking around to see if anyone else got it. And when he asked me, I stopped for a minute and I said, I think I might still be an ambassador. I'm not really sure. See, the last time I had talked to them was last year, and it was a pretty cool thing that they were doing. I think it led to one of the reasons why Reggie follows me on Twitter now. It was a really cool thing that they did, but that was the last time I really had talked to them at all. And before that, I did do a few games with them because I thought the idea of a Nintendo Ambassador program was more for doing reviews of games rather than more promotion of games, which I guess that still kind of goes hand in hand. But let me explain what happened here with this ambassador program, because Nintendo, I think, started to clamp down on it, and it kind of made it difficult to really cover the games, I want to say, well or even accurately from what I was trying to do with them. So when I first signed up with the ambassador program, the first game that I got was Splatoon 2, and we got that a little early. All right, so I think we got that like maybe even over a week early. It might have been longer than that. And that was great.
Oh, it's just me and Spawn Wave. I wanted to play with IGN again. I wanted to see them redeem themselves.
Evan got a chance to sit down on the Switch, play a bunch of Splatoon 2, did a full preview within the embargo guidelines, because of course you have to sign an embargo when you get these things. And after that, he also did a review for release day, and everything worked out well. There is disclosure, of course, that has to happen, and we followed all of the guidelines, and everything seemed great. They liked the review, they liked the preview, and we were off and running. At least it felt like we were making good relationship with Nintendo and their goal and PR and all that stuff. And to be honest, everyone at Golan that I talked to, which I had several reps because they kept kind of cycling through, were all really nice and helpful. So that was good. But after that, I started, of course, we do the news show and everything. And I remember the Splatoon 2 sales had come up. And I was like, okay, we're going to cover the sales for that because this is around the time the Switch was taken off and sales were good. And I was like, all right, we'll cover that. It's Media Create sales come out. Here's a big number for Splatoon 2. Let's go over that and what this could mean for Splatoon going forward in the Switch. And it was big part of the thumbnail and all this. And I got an email like later that day, and it was, you have to put a disclosure on this news video for Splatoon 2. And I said, well, that's not a review for Splatoon 2. It's not even, I think we might have used some of the trailer, right? But I was like, it's not influenced by anything with product placement or anything I received from Nintendo, but I still had to. So there was even a conversation where, okay, should we take the video down and put a disclosure thing on it? And I think what I ended up doing was doing an annotation for it because they were still around at the time. And I managed to get that in there, but then like the following week, annotations, I think, went away. So it ruined that. And I remember I had to put a disclosure on the tweet that I put out for it. It's like the hashtag free game. And I had to put an annotation in like the description. I had like a pin comment. It's a whole thing to try to make that work for them. And I remember I talked to them and said, look, these are news videos. They're not like reviews or anything. No opinions necessarily expressed around the game that I received from Nintendo. So how are we going to work around that? And I never really got a clear-cut answer. And to be honest, I kind of just stopped caring about it anyway. I said, well, these aren't even really related to it. I'm not doing any type of product placement or anything with it, so I'll just put them out there and move on. So that was an interesting thing that happened there. And then we move on, and Mario Odyssey comes up, and this was a weird one because this was around the time that they had to make some changes internal, and I think what happened here is that we had leaks around the Pokemon games. I think there was an issue with Mario and Luigi. And of course, when that happened, Nintendo started clamping down all over the ambassador program because we think it may have been an ambassador that leaked these things out, and that kind of affects everyone at that point. So they stopped really doing anything early. Like early releases kind of just stopped. And what they did was they gave you the game at midnight, or in some instances, the day it released. And then they want you to do some sort of review or coverage for it within like 2 weeks. And it was strange to me because there are a lot of guidelines around disclosure. And it got to the point there where I started to think it might make more sense for me to just buy the game and avoid any of the hashtag free game and disclosures all over the place. And because like when you get to this point, you can buy the game, you can write it off, and then you can be more, I guess, free with all of your tweets. Because if you mention Mario Odyssey, for example, at the time, even if it's just something small, right? You're like, oh, I finally finished Mario Odyssey, or I just finished this boss, or here's when the Mario Odyssey review is coming out. You got to do hashtag free game. And it was like, it always, I know it gets sideways looks by people when you have that hashtag, but it is needed for disclosure. And people will ask, okay, if you get this game from Nintendo, is there that concern in the back of your head that if the game is not good and I give it a bad review, will they cut me off? And I think it probably exists for some people, but to be honest, I would talk a lot of smack on some of the bad decisions Nintendo made at the time, and I never got like any emails about it or anything. I was always very fair, right? Like when they did the phone app and they did that ridiculous headset where you had to hook up this headset to this phone and then you also plug it into your Switch and it looked like a mess. I mean, I destroyed that. Like, I was all over it and they seemed okay with it. I didn't really get any kind of email from them about like, hey, what are you doing over here? Nothing. But Mario Odyssey shows up. I get it like at like 1 a.m. the night when it comes out. And I knew someone who was on the ambassador program that was at the midnight release at the time. And they had asked them, they said, they met one of their Golden reps at the Mario Odyssey midnight release. And they said, hey, can I just get the review code now? Or because they're there with them. Like, can you just email it to me? Maybe I can hang out here and start it. They're like, no, we'll email it to you at like 12:01 or something tonight, midnight. And he's like, well, I can just buy it here. I'm at the midnight release. I can just buy it here and then avoid all disclosure. And I guess that's what they decided to do. But it's such a weird thing with that. And it started to kind of snowball into, you'll get the game on release day or even a few days after sometimes. It's very strange. But the one that really got me, and I was like, I think I need to kind of step back from this program because it's starting to make less and less sense to even do it anymore when I can just buy the game, was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And this was really funny because for weeks people asked why I wasn't really covering it in terms of like a review, because I was really excited leading up to it. And I was like, okay, let me email them. I'm going to see if I can get this game early. I'm going to get through it. We're going to go over it. I'm excited to play it. And I thought I was going to get it a little early. Turns out they sent it to me, I believe, later in the day on release day, and they wanted coverage within 2 weeks about it, obviously, right? They get you the code, they want something back, right? Some kind of a return on investment. And I knew this game was long, and I'm like, oh, man. Okay, so here's what I'll do. I had to, like, barter and compromise with it. I said, here's what I'll do. I'll put 100 hours in the game because after the game comes out, most people are just going to play it and make up their own mind, and I could still do a video on it, but I don't know if they'll get the return they're looking for necessarily with that. I said, I'm not really going to stream the game, but how about I do 100 hours into it, and then I'll do a video with my thoughts on it there. And that ended up working out. But I realized that there was pretty much ambassador program and press. I wanted to be more on the side of press if I was going to do game reviews. And it was around that time that I really started to focus more on the news stuff anyway. And that was always in the back of my mind. Do I have to put a disclosure on this if they are giving me a game on release day that doesn't really give you much of an advantage anyway in terms of coverage for release day reviews? Is it worth doing that to then have to put a disclosure on it when I can just buy the game and avoid all of that and then cover the news stuff more freely without worrying about an email showing up later that day about having to put disclosure on a news video that has really nothing to do with the review or the game itself that I got from Nintendo? So I pretty much just stopped messaging them. There was one I tried to get a Switch Lite. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna get it. I messaged them and they messaged me back saying that they'd let me know. And I don't really expect any company to send me a system anymore because they probably, I have a feeling, understand what I'll do with it. It's coming apart, right? I'm going to rip the thing apart. I'm going to look inside of it and see if there's any flaws or good things, right, about it. I mean, like Analog sent me their systems and they said, yeah, have at it. Go ahead, take it apart. And I understand why, because they're pretty good quality inside. They even had a weight to try to hold it down really well on the bottom. And it's like little things like that that have some attention to detail inside for construction to try to make it more sturdy. I mean, I'll praise them for it, but I understand why some companies might not be very excited to send me a system and then have it destroyed essentially on camera and then put back together because I want to use it. But I at least understand that side of it. So from then on, I just stopped messaging them. They didn't really message me much. And they probably forgot about me, I think, at this point, which is fine. I had pretty good experiences whenever I talked to them. They tried to work me on some stuff like the Xenoblade thing, but ultimately, I think the ambassadorship works well for streamers specifically because you get the game even on release day. You can then stream it, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense there. Or people doing gameplay, or even just people who don't necessarily look to do a full-on over massive review, right? After beating the game, maybe they want to do more impression stuff. I think it kind of makes sense there too. But for me, I think at this point, I'm just good with what I'm doing now with news pieces, opinion pieces, talking about different things going on, and even giving impressions on games after I've bought it, I guess on release day, played some of it, and yeah, it comes out a little later, but I think I'm good now with that rather than even trying to scramble for review if I can't get it early enough, right? And maybe one day I'll work towards being with press with Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony and all of that. But I think we're in a good place for what we're doing now. I think if anyone is really looking to try to be a Nintendo ambassador, you're going to want to weigh your options on that. It's not, I think, as glamorous as people see it from the outside. And to be honest, I don't think it really helps your channel that much overall. Like, I mean, I guess it helps because you don't have to buy the game, but there are a lot of restrictions and disclosures that you have to put on your stuff, and sometimes they only want you to show certain parts if you get the game early, and it can end up being a whole thing. And I know there's eggshell walking as well that takes place. So I like just being able to say whatever. Like if Nintendo puts out some terrible games on the Super Nintendo online app, well, I'll just say they're terrible games, right? Or something to that degree. There's a bit more freeing with that. But as for Wood, he'll be fine. Like he does a great job with his eShop videos because that does shine a light on a lot of indie developers who I can tell you now probably send him codes constantly on it. And I think at this point he's built up a great community of people that want to just watch his videos anyway. So the Nintendo stuff, the ambassador program, I think is better for, like I said, streamers or even people who are kind of coming up on YouTube, and that can kind of give them a helping hand to get to that next level. But otherwise, I think Nintendo will just reach out to you themselves if they want to bring you in for something or do some sort of PR event. But that's pretty much it for me. I just wanted to explain to you guys my thoughts on it, what happened with me in the ambassador program, because people were asking if I was even still a part of it. I don't know. I assume I'm not. But thanks, guys, for watching. Let me know what you think about this down below, and I'll see you next time.